My name is Leslie Householder. I am the founder of the company called Rare Faith. I'm an author. I love sharing principles that help people improve their lives. And we have with us also today Ann Ferguson. She's going to introduce herself in just a little bit. We are going to pack a lot of information into this 1 hour. And so we're going to just get started. Be ready. We're going to ask for some responses in the chat. We want to hear from you, what you're thinking, feeling as we go along. So awaken your genius. There are a few premises that I want to lay out. And that is number one, we as human beings have a purpose to fulfill. And that purpose may just be a day-to-day thing. Like my purpose today is to get groceries for the family. Or my purpose today is to make sure that my child gets to her practice on time. There's also larger purposes. My purpose is to raise a happy family or a productive young person, as I send them off into the world. Or my purpose might be to develop and establish a strong marriage, or my purpose is to do whatever I feel God put me here to do. So there's different sizes of purposes, but the thing that we all share in common is that we have obstacles that get in the way to discovering and accomplishing those purposes sometimes. You might call it a mission. I'm going to be talking about some of the bigger missions that we try to achieve in life. And ultimately, it's to be happy and fulfilled. It's to get to the end of our days and look back on our life without regret. To say, I did everything I intended to do. I did everything I felt like God wanted me to do. I fulfilled my mission. And yet some of us go through periods of time where we're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what's next for me. I don't know how to do what I feel like I'm supposed to do. So some of the obstacles that we face to discovering and accomplishing those purposes or missions are, number one, distractions or lack of resources. By distractions, I mean, I know I'm supposed to be developing my relationship with my husband, for example, but I'm so distracted by the money problem, or I'm so distracted by the wayward child situation, or whatever. So there's obstacles that are distractions and lack of resources. And so as you're thinking about maybe why you came today, what maybe you have that you're trying to accomplish, maybe the distractions or obstacles that are in the way of you fulfilling or even discovering what your next is. The premise of this presentation or this discussion today is that genius ideas can help you get past the obstacles so that you can fulfill your purpose. And again, that purpose can be little or big, and it can change throughout your life. So the first thing that we need to do is identify the question. And I hope you can grab a piece of paper and have that handy. There's two things I'm going to have you do. One is going to be on the first side of the paper and the other's on the back side of the paper. So I'm going to just give you a second to grab some paper and something to write with. And while you're doing that, I'd like you to be thinking about what problem in your life right now do you really need to solve? So on the first side of the paper, I want you to write at the top what problem in your life you really need to solve right now. Write the problem down. Doesn't have to be long, just I need more money, or I need this problem with this relationship, or whatever it might be. Just put it at the top of your paper. Write that down. And if you have to think too hard about what it is, don't overthink it. Just what problem would you like to solve? If anything was possible, what problem is kind of on your mind? So now I'd like you to try to identify, is it a distraction or is it a lack of something? And we're not going to go too deeply into whether that matters or whatever, but just I want you to look at it, kind of analyze it a little bit. Is it distracting you from something that you really want to be doing, or is it a lack of something? And you can just write down distraction or lack. And then once you have that, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do something, and I'm going to get my timer ready. And so have your pencil ready, and we're going to go 20 seconds. And in those 20 seconds, I want you to make a list, a bullet point list, just of everything you can think of to solve that problem. Bullet point style, don't get super detailed on it and don't overthink it. You're not committing to do any of these things. You're just listing ideas. So 20 seconds, ready, go. All the things you can think of that might solve it. You're not committing, you're just throwing down ideas. I'm going to give you more than 20 seconds. We'll go 40. Stop. Okay, now I want you to put in the chat the number of bullet point items you came up with, how many ways you could think of that could solve the problem or at least help you make progress towards solving it. How many ideas did you come up with? Okay, good. 2, 4, 5, 6, perfect. 10, awesome. Judy, 4. Great. So now, with that list that you have, I just want you to think about something. I know some of you have heard this before, but it's worth revisiting, and I revisit it often. You know what a radio is, and if you're my age or within a decade or so, you know what it looks like to have a radio on the desk in front of you with dials on it, all right? Or in your car. You know, you may have a radio in your car with knobs. So I want you to think about the radio in your car. As you're driving down the road, say you want to hear country music. So you're going to turn on the radio, and it may or may not be tuned to country. And so you turn the dial or you push the buttons until you get to it. And what's happening is you are tapping into a frequency, a radio frequency where country music is being broadcast. Now, if you turn on that radio and you tune the station to country, you know, I had someone ask me once, did that action suck the music into the room? Did it attract music from out there somewhere into my car? And I had to recognize that actually, no, it didn't suck any music into the room and it didn't attract music to me. What it did was it made audible music that was already there. In that car, there is country music playing, whether or not I can hear it. In that car, there is talk radio playing on a broadcast, whether or not I can hear it. Classical, Spanish, whatever it is, it's already in the room. It's already in the car with me. And I use the knob or I use the buttons to adjust my tuner to the frequency where that broadcast is. And so I love that. I love that concept because as it was explained to me, we are like a radio. We are like a radio. We are made up of atoms and molecules that are buzzing around, vibrating on a molecular level. And depending on the frequency that our physical body is vibrating at, we are going to pick up on ideas and broadcasts that are already going on all around us. There is a frequency for doubt. There is a frequency for excitement. There is a frequency for faith. There is a frequency for creativity. There is a frequency for solving problems, and there's a frequency for being discouraged about our problems. And so as we start to pay attention to the kind of thoughts we have, we can consciously make changes in our thinking that brings us up to different frequencies of thought. And so here's something that I want you to do next. I want you to think about images on the screen of your mind. There might be, for example, an image of a potential wreck that comes into your mind, which causes you to hesitate before trying to take that left turn in front of oncoming traffic, right? So you're there, you're getting ready to turn across oncoming traffic to the side street, and you're thinking, can I go? Should I go? And just as you're about to go, you kind of see a concept in the image of your mind of this car T-boning, and you're like, no, I won't go. That was an image on the screen of your mind that caused a certain behavior. So the images and thoughts, you know, sometimes they're vague. They're images or ideas, but they do have an impact on our choices and our results. And those images and thoughts that we think are on a certain frequency based on the images or concepts you hold in your mind. So that frequency of thought that you're on delivers a steady broadcast of ideas, which are going to correspond to the images or concepts that occupy the most time in your mind. And it's kind of deep. And this is just kind of like an excerpt of the kind of work and activity that we do at our Genius boot camps. But here's the thing. The solution to every problem is only an idea away. Let that sink in for a second. The solution to every problem is only an idea away. And I want you to type that in the chat if you really want to solidify that concept. We're going to talk about that for a second. You know, you think you need money. No, you really only need the idea that will tell you how or where to get the money. You might think you need a better job. No, you really only need the idea that will tell you where to find the better job. It all comes down to an idea, a spark, the thing that tells you what to do next. And, you know, best of all, just like a radio broadcast, the idea you need right now to solve that problem that's on your paper is already right there in that room with you. Just like a radio broadcast, it's already in the room with you. So we're going to bring this all together. And this is, like I said, a super condensed, modified version of something that we do at Genius Bootcamp. But what I want you to do is turn your paper over. And instead of writing again what the problem is, I want you to write what it looks like solved. At the top of the paper, I want you to write what it looks like solved. In other words, if you need money, you might say, I received all the money I needed today! Exclamation point. I received all the money I needed today. If you've been feeling lonely, you might say, I just had the most amazing time with someone I care about, and I could just feel how much they care about me. If you're dealing with a difficult parenting situation, you might say, I knew exactly what to do, and it was brilliant. It went really well. You don't even have to say how it went well. Just the problem solved is that it went well. Okay, so take a minute to write down at the top of your back side of the paper what your problem looks like solved. I got what I needed. I feel how I want to feel. And if you're feeling courageous, I'd love to have you put in the chat what you came up with. But now I want you to take a minute to imagine how it would feel to be able to say that thing honestly. How would it really feel to be able to say that? It was solved. I got that job. Our relationship is healed. Take a minute. Once you've been able to feel it, just for a moment, I want you to type in the chat, felt it. Felt it. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be brief. It can just be so brief. But just imagine. Good. Okay, now I'm going to give you another 40 seconds. I want you to write down all the things you can think of that could help that come true. If you think something from your list, the first list would still help, write it again. If you think of something new, write that down. Again, you're not committing to do any of these things. You're just listing ideas. 40 seconds, go. And I'm going to give you more time again. We'll keep going. Just keep writing. Ten more seconds. Okay, stop. Now, type in the chat the number of new ideas you came up with. How many new ways could you think of that might help you make progress toward realizing that desired outcome? How many new ways did you come up with? By identifying the outcome you want, instead of defining the problem, You tuned into a higher thought frequency and got a different kind of spark. You were hearing a different broadcast. So I want you to pay attention to the sparks you get when you're holding images of the desired outcome in your mind, and be suspicious of the sparks that come to you when you're holding images of a disaster or disappointment you're trying to avoid. So I love that you guys are finding more things. Julie got 6, Jenny 5, Jane got 2 more. That's awesome. Can you feel the difference? When we try to solve our problems at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them, we end up in these loops, repeating experiences that we just don't like. We need to focus on the problem solved. Remember the radio analogy, get ourselves up to the different thought frequency, because the idea you need is already in the room, and the solution to every problem is only an idea away. I'm going to turn the time over to Anne now. She has some really powerful ideas that she's going to share with you next, and we'll give it to you, Anne.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. I love this so much. First of all, those of you who don't know me, I'm Anne Ferguson, and I am a facilitator for Genius Bootcamp. And I own my own company called Joyful Heart Mentoring, where we help people connect to their joy so that that vibration raises so that you can create anything you need to. Because when you're already on a higher vibration, all the answers start to flow. So I also just went through this exercise, as some of you saw. My problem, forming a 501c3 nonprofit. My distraction or lack, I have no clue how to do that. Like, I don't have knowledge. So when I wrote down, I got some good things to flow, and I love this. And what does it look like solved? So for mine, donations are flowing in, and I'm in Rwanda. That is me, it being done and being solved, because the nonprofit has to do with bringing joy to other nations. So one thing that I have experienced over and over and over as I've taught this and tried to help people through it is I get a question once in a while. Okay, but what if I've never been there? Like, what if I don't even know what that looks like? How do I envision it done if I don't have any connection to it? So one thing I would love to offer you is one little trick that I use to help me see it done. And that is, I try to generate what would I want to feel if it were done? What feeling comes to me? So for instance, I had a situation where I wanted to feel generous from abundance. Like, I know what it feels like to be generous from lack. That's when I don't quite have enough, but somebody's need is greater than mine. And so I give them what I have, and I'm a little bit strapped, but I can make it work. That's generosity out of lack. I've done that. I know exactly what that feels like, but I didn't know how it would feel to be generous out of abundance. And that was one of those things that I really wanted to experience. And yet I felt like it had never happened, because to me, the generosity was a lot of money. And the reality was, when I was 19 years old, I got to feel generosity out of abundance. I had my own apartment. I had 2 jobs. I was living by myself, and Christmas came. And I found that I had all the money I needed for rent and my bills. And I was working at a fragrance department, and I had enough money to buy my mother real Giorgio perfume. And that was a big deal, because she used to go to the grocery store and get the off-brand that just smelled like alcohol. And so I got to purchase some real, still had enough money for myself. And the feeling of watching her open that up, like what my excitement, my anticipation, and knowing that I still had enough was the experience, the memory that I needed to then project into my future. Oh, that's what I would love. That's what it looks like done when I have enough and I'm able to answer a real critical need of somebody else without it actually hurting or causing me any lack. It was a beautiful experience. When I was able to do that, there was this a message that came in from a group of people that I know, and this one woman who has a lot of rare faith. And she says, hey, everyone, I'm asking for some prayers right now. Something has happened. It's right after Christmas, and I don't have enough money for rent. And this is a single mom with 2 kids. And so I went and I knelt down and I said, Heavenly Father, I would love, please bless her, please help her. And the answer was, you're the miracle today. And it was like, what? Because I just thought I was just supposed to be praying. He says, you're the miracle, send her the money. And I had enough to be the one to send her the money. And I got to experience exactly what I wanted when it was done. So what I want to know is, in your problem that you've got, as you've just identified, what does that look like done? Do you have a memory anywhere where the feeling of it being done is very similar, that you can go back to generate that emotion in your body? Because that's really, really, really fun, and it's very powerful when you have the ability to do that. So, a peace instead of confusion. Thank you for that. Anybody else, can you connect to that emotion? Because what we know is that when we're trying to create something or getting over a distraction, when we're really trying to solve that problem, if we're sitting in the I don't have, or in the distraction, like Leslie said, our vibration is not on the level in which the answer exists. So when you get your body into that vibration of that emotion that you most desire, the answer is going to show up. So I actually kind of went back here in my own situation. When I very first started business, I was scared to death to talk to an attorney to help me formulate some things that I needed to for the business. But I envisioned what it felt like to hold the paperwork that said I was a legal, viable business. And I envisioned that, and I felt it. Well, I can now use that memory going forward to go, I have formed a 501c3 to help people around the world. I have a memory that I can now go to. And when I hold out of that memory and I ask again, what are the ideas that could possibly help me? Now the ideas can start flowing in, because I'm already vibrating with the possibility. That's the point, right? Vibrate with the rare faith, the possibility of it already being there. I want to go really quickly into kind of how to hear those ideas and how to evaluate whether it's a yes for you or a no for you. So you all have a list of 4 or 5 ideas. Which one first? Which one do you actually move your feet on? That's the next question, because you can get ideas all day long. But if you don't move your feet, you're going to stay in the exact same place. So with spark ideas, one thing that you can do is ask the question, yes or no. Is this something I should do? Yes or no? Now, I would love to know how many of you are like me and you actually hear no's better. So if you hear a no easier than you hear a yes, I'd like you to put a number 1 in the chat. Just a 1. Let me explain. When I have been going and doing something, I know when it's actually not the right thing to do. Like, I kind of get this pit in my stomach, and sometimes I force myself to do it anyway, and it never turns out right. That feeling for me is a no. So I've got some things here, and I'm going to go, okay, SBDC, that's the Small Business Development Center. That was one of my things that came up. As I look at that, I will say, okay, step 1. Is my step 1 SBDC? And then I wait and I listen. And I hear no's much easier. So many times I pray for the no. Another thing that helps me move my feet towards things, if I'm feeling pretty strong about it, because I hear a lot of people say, I don't know if this is God's will or if it's my will, is I use a tactic that my daughter came up with. Thank you so much, Julie, Ann, Roger, David, Leslie, you're all feeling those no's. My daughter does this. She says, hey, Heavenly Father, this is what I think I should do, and it feels pretty good right now, so I'm just going to march forward and do that. If it's like against some kind of divine plan of happiness that you and I have worked out, go ahead and tell me no, and I'll do a 180. And I love that, because it puts that making sure we're checking in with God for answers, but also being our own creators and moving our own feet, right? So praying for the no is really, really helpful. Those for me are for the little teeny tiny steps. Now, every once in a while, you're going to get a big one. You're going to get a step that feels really overwhelming, and it feels like it's too big for you, and you're like, I don't know if this is the right answer or not. You get really nervous. So we're going to talk about what that nervousness is really quickly. The terror barrier. How many of you guys have heard of that term? So a lot of times when God tells us to do a big thing and we know it, we step in and we come up against this, what we feel is a terror barrier, and then we bounce back out because it's uncomfortable. And we go, oh, maybe that wasn't for me, right? Anybody else? If you have felt the terror barrier, put a number 2 in the chat. Okay, you've got this really great idea. You kind of know that God's telling you, your head and your heart are saying yes, And then you go, oh, but that's too scary. I can't do this. I don't know what to do. And you bounce back out, right? Okay, 2 things. Number 1, I want you to shift it so that we stop calling it a terror barrier. This is why. We talk a lot in Rare Faith, we talk a lot in Genius Bootcamp specifically about that mind model and the subconscious and how the subconscious follows orders. Well, if we tell the subconscious terror, then what it reads is run away, and barrier means blocked, don't go into it. And Leslie and I had this conversation a couple months ago when I found out for me that it feels like a terror barrier, but what it actually is, I want you to really hear, is thank you so much for all these 2s. Dan, Judy, Ann, David, Lana, always from Peggy. Okay, listen up, Peggy. What if it's not a terror barrier? What if that's what it feels like? But what if it's just a quiver of growth? And what I want you to hear in this is that if you look at time lapse of plants growing, what happens is that there'll be one solid root that goes down, then some kind of fingers. So the root would be your idea. That's your spark idea. As you think about the possibility of how that's going to go down, you kind of look at it and you connect to the emotion of it. Those are little fingers of the other roots. But what's interesting to watch is as all of the nutrients come into those roots and the stem starts to grow, there is a quiver right before the shell cracks. And once the shell cracks, notice the plant is still actually underground. If we ride out that quiver, we're going to push through, and then all of a sudden we grow and we become exactly what we need to be for that thing, that new next right step that was given. So if you can kind of reframe in your mind, it's not a terror barrier, it's just a quiver. Can you ride out a quiver of growth? Can you just sit in the uncomfortable, weird feeling for a minute until you can jump past that? The quiver of growth, does that feel a little bit better to just know that all you have to do is ride it out? And sometimes it's just a day. Sometimes it's a couple hours. Sometimes it's just on the other side of the conversation, being uncomfortable just long enough to get comfortable in the new thing. So the other thought that I want to give you is sometimes there's a great big thing. And those of you who have read Jackrabbit Factor know that one of the points that is given is sometimes there's a mentor, and each time the mentor is asking for some kind of buy-in, something that is a sacrifice so that you can have something else. Because sometimes it feels too big. I need to purchase a big thing or go to an event, or I need a whole lot of time for something. And it's like, is this really my will? Am I just making this up? This feels too big. I have learned something called a soul's yes and a soul's no. So when you're coming up against one of those things, if it's a soul's yes that's really going to help you grow in a new way, what you will feel if you say no to a soul's yes, you'll feel like you missed out. You feel like everybody else has advantages. You feel like you're stuck. You feel like nothing ever works out for you. That is saying no to a soul's yes. If you have a soul's no, where you kind of know in your gut, no, this one isn't for me, but maybe you're getting pressure from a whole lot of other people, and so you say yes anyway. What happens when you say yes to a soul's no is that you're bitter, you get resentful, you feel controlled, and a lot of times you show up in passive aggression, right? If you're entering into a program or you're going towards any kind of learning, or especially if there's a financial exchange for something, you can check in with that spark idea that just came, because you got on vibration to find out your spark idea, and then you can check in and you can say, is this my soul's yes or soul's no? And if it's a soul's yes, I guarantee you it is already Heavenly Father's will. He has already said yes to you, which means the resources, the time, the focus, the investment that you need is already present. That answer, the resources, I think they're already there. It's just go back in, see yourself in the possibility, see it done. I'm on the other end of this training. I'm on the other end of this workshop. I'm on the other end of this financial exchange. And what am I experiencing on the back end? and then you'll get the next idea on how the money comes, the time comes, the focus comes. It's this beautiful, beautiful circle. It just keeps going round and round and round if you know how to apply these principles. So Leslie, that's kind of my take on it. A soul's yes, a soul's no. Checking in with the little things and going, okay, is this a yes for me or is it a no? Like I said, I hear the no so much more often. And then going back into those memories to help me raise my vibration to where I want that answer to be.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I love your take on these principles. And I would love to hear from you on the call tonight, what you're getting. What are you hearing from this? What have you learned today? What can you anchor to your memory that you're going to take from this and apply in your life? Put it in the chat. What are you remembering, or what do you want to remember from this? Because it's so important to not just learn a cool idea, but make some decisions about how you're going to apply it in your life. Because as you do that, you're going to start seeing changes more rapidly and in so much better ways than perhaps you've experienced before. I'd like to share a little experience with you that I had. So I wrote Jackrabbit Factor back in the 2005 is when I finished it, and we released it at that time, and things were going really well. We'd gone from struggling for many, many years to suddenly things opening up and ideas leading us to solutions in rapid form, to where our struggle went from what it was to tripling our income in 3 months, which was what the problem was we needed to solve. And it's by using these principles that we were able to experience that shift. Now, that could have been a one and done, but ever since then, we've had plenty of opportunity to face new challenges and apply ourselves to the principles again. But when the recession came along in 2008, we had been doing increasingly well, and we were thinking, okay, maybe it's time that we start investing in real estate and start expanding our stewardship and improving on our reach. And we just had big plans and big ideas. And so we started investing in real estate, but it turns out this was happening at the top of the market. So when things started to unravel and it felt like the rug was pulled out from under us, I started to question everything. Well, are the principles that I teach in the Jackrabbit Factor, are they still true? Do they still work? And so week to week, we were facing big problems, big financial problems, because we had all these properties that weren't selling and they weren't being rented. And we were having to come up with big money often just to hold it all together. And we were using the principles. Okay, we have a problem. We need an idea. And we kept pulling the rabbit out of the hat to keep things afloat. But after a year and a half, it was exhausting. It gets exhausting. You don't want to keep having to solve the same problem. And we just thought that if we could think right through this, that somehow we would turn this disaster into a great blessing. It got to the point where we kind of came to the end of our resources. We were down to about $200 left in the bank. Our there was no credit left to draw on. We were out of savings. Everything was just gone. And it was kind of like, that was the thing that I'd been worried about in the back of my head all that time. What happens if we run out of money? What's going to happen if we run out of money? We've got 7 kids that we're trying to support, and we just didn't know how we were going to get through it. And so had an idea that, it was our anniversary, decided that we needed to take a break from our worries just for a short time, just to celebrate us. So I said, honey, do you think we could just go out to eat and pretend like everything's okay for 2 hours? And he's like, what the heck? There was really, we'd exhausted everything. But our plan was to go to dinner and raise our vibration up to a new frequency of thought, because all of the ideas that we had tried had been exhausted and we were out of ideas. So we knew this process. We knew that to get new ideas, you have to change what's going on up here to change the broadcast that you hear. So we went to dinner, and instead of talking about the problem, we were like, I have no idea how we're going to get through this week. I have no idea how we're going to get through the month or the year even, but do you think we'll have it figured out in 10 years? Oh, sure, we'll have it figured out in 10 years. By then, everything's going to be fine in 10 years. Well, then let's talk about what we'll be doing in 10 years. And so we started imagining, okay, well, how old will the kids be? What do you think they'll be doing? Where will we be living? What kind of a home do we want to be in? Because it looked like we were going to have to sell the home that we were in. We weren't affording it, and we were going to have to downsize. And reset some things. And so where do we want to be? What will we be doing? Will we still be teaching these principles? Yeah, I mean, it's what we do. I mean, we saw enough proof, even through the disasters, that day by day we were getting what we needed, but it was just exhausting. We were really tired of the fight. And so as we were imagining this, we started to feel different. We started to get excited, like the problems are going to wait for us. It's not like we have to take care of the problems so much that we have to remember them all the time. We can let them wait for 2 hours while we enjoy dinner together. And so as we're doing that, we didn't get any great ideas. We weren't really looking for great ideas. This exercise was just to change how we felt, even if for a moment. And as, we paid the bill, we walked out to the car, and as we're approaching the car and he's opening my door, we hear something from behind us, and it's the server running after us. He's like, wait a minute. We turn around and he's waving a piece of paper. And we're like, what? And he says, because it's your anniversary, the meal's on us. We had already paid the bill, but they voided the bill. They voided the receipt and chased after us to let us know. And we don't remember ever making a point to them to say that it was our anniversary. I think they overheard us perhaps, and this was a chain. This wasn't like a mom and pop local store. This was a chain, a franchise. And I'd never experienced free meal on our anniversary after having paid a bill. And so that did two things for us. Number one, now we didn't get any ideas per se directly from that exercise. We weren't looking for them because I really wasn't conscious to this particular principle at the time. I just knew that feeling better was going to help something. And what it did was it did cause a spark. But the spark it caused was over there with the server. And that's one thing that's super, super cool and powerful about this, is that you get to where you need to be on the right frequency for the problem solved, like how that looks, the solution, how that's going to feel. And it doesn't just bring you up onto a higher frequency of thought, but it's going to cause sparks in people in your world around you that might be a piece of that solution. And it just reminded us that we have got to stay in the feeling of how we want to feel, even if we don't have a justifiable reason to feel that way, because we're creating. And so coming out of that, we went home, and a few weeks later, we're like, we're still in this problem. It didn't go away. Yeah, we got a free meal for a night. And that was awesome. And it taught us the importance of feeling and choosing how we feel. But it got us thinking, okay, let's have a brainstorm session with our mentor. At the time, our mentor came over, and we're like, we need to brainstorm. What do we want? Like, how do we want to feel? And we started talking about that, building a vision. And then we all kind of started paying attention to the thoughts we're having, like you were listing on the back side of your page, listing ideas. And my husband had a spark, and he says, well, what if we do this? And it was a thought we hadn't thought before. And by following that thought, we generated $43,000 out of nothing that month.
That's amazing.
That's the power of a genius idea and the importance of getting yourself prepared to receive one.
Yeah. Leslie, I've got something here that is really easy to implement, like right now, about this. And it's so simple, okay? Take out the word want out of your vocabulary completely. Okay, so once again, it's a subconscious thing. If you think about what are you feeling when you say, I want, it's actually generating a feeling of lack. Like what I want is what I would really, what I want, it's like not having. But if you say, what I would love is, so ask yourself the question, what would I love in 10 years? What would I love next week? What would I love? It changes the way that your vibration is, so that those things that you would love kind of start to flow in and match up. I know that when I say, well, what I want is for people to understand why it's so important to invest in what's going on in Rwanda, right? That's a lack. I feel like they just don't get it. But when I say what I would love is for the message to get out in a way that people connect to how important joy is for those people or other people around, changes my ability to hear those sparks so much faster. So start today, as of today, want out of your language completely and just start saying what I would love. What's really fun is when you do that, people around you start doing the same thing. So my husband has now started saying, okay, so what I would love tonight is, and I go, yes, we're totally creating from love. And it's so beautiful. It changes everything when you start to do that. It's easier for me to get on that higher vibration if I just say what would I love. Pretty easy.
Thank you, Anne. That's such a powerful, powerful point. And I learned that from you. And sometimes I still forget because it's so habitual. It's so ingrained to say, I want. What do you want? And you heard me saying it today. What would you like? What do you want? And I noticed that when I'm around Anne, I catch myself and I will tell her what I would love because she's trained me that way. And I'm still adopting that. And so what I would love is to have those of you who are in this class with us today, put in the chat, what would you love? It might be, what would you love in 10 years? What would you love next week? What would you love today? Just come up with something that you would love and let us know what that is. Isn't this powerful? This is so powerful. And it's so simple. It is so simple. Put it in the chat, put it on your paper where you have the problem solved. Look at how you wrote the problem solved down. Maybe preface it, stick at the front of it. I would love, and then describe that. See if you can shift the way you've phrased the problem solved.
So I've got what I would love.
Okay.
What I would love is training more about this because we've got some Genius boot camps coming up, just pouring all over into you, all sorts of things that would raise your vibration, give you courage to step into the next right step, all of that stuff.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to tell what is going on. We have a Genius boot camp coming up. There's live where you can show up and be there in person for 3 days and you're taken care of and you get to just dive deep and really, really not just learn about, but practice. You'll actually practice these things and experience the power of changing the frequency of two. I'm going to drop a link here where you're going to see where the next live is, but there's also a Zoom option where you can do the experience on Zoom. We ask you to create a space in your own home where you're going to not have the distractions and you get to do this. And I promise you, you don't get bored. You're taught something and then you're sent off to practice and come back and report and describe your experience. It's so powerful. Now, one thing that I do want to share, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat where you're going to be able to find out more information about our upcoming Genius boot camps. I hope you are going to do whatever it takes to participate in this. It is life-changing. It is life-changing. And we've been doing them for over 10 years. The stories, people that have come out of these and the things that they've created and the ideas that they got and the solutions that they've found, it's miraculous in that it amazes. You know what I'm saying?
It was one of the first times I recognized the soul's yes. So I had read the Jackrabbit Factor. I was doing guided mindset mastery, self-paced, and there were these emails that came through on Genius Bootcamp, and I kept being pulled to it, although I had no clue what it was. And I kept being pulled to it. And then there was this moment where I had to check in and say, what is this? I don't do things like this. And it was like my soul was just craving it. And the minute I said yes to that soul's yes, it was the next day that the possibility, like the hotel room lined up and I got an extra bit of money that came in and things that made it possible. That was my first soul's yes. So I would ask right now to check in on that soul's yes or soul's no. If this is pulling at you, or later on tonight, check in.
Yeah, I want to let you know what the link has been posted in the chat. If you want to review what we've covered today, if you want to share it with someone else, that's going to be at that page. So you're going to see a link to the upcoming events. You're going to see a link to where you can read Portal to Genius, which is the sequel to the Jackrabbit Factor. It was the book that I wrote after our experience through the recession. So you can learn more about how that happened and how you can do that in your own life. There's also an opportunity for you to have a free consultation. So what you can do is talk with someone from our team about what your goals are, what's in the way, what's stopping you, and whether or not this is right for you, whether or not bootcamp is the right next step for you. If you want just to gather more information, you can do that in the free consultation. They have an assessment for you where it'll assess your mindset and what the next best step is that we would recommend. And then you can check in and see if that's a soul's yes or a soul's no. Because sometimes information is what leads to inspiration. And I know some of you on the call are information gatherers, and you want to make sure you have all the facts before you make your choice. Thank you again, everybody. We'll watch for your messages and updates. I love getting emails from people who have attended our events like this, who've attended our Genius Bootcamps. I want to know your stories. I love spotlighting stories in our newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter, I'll add that to the link where you can make sure you're receiving those. But that is there for you. And we're just excited to share. We're excited to work with you. And I'm excited to see you at a boot camp or to hear about what your boot camp experience was like. I want to read some of these loves. I would love to not fear, just believe. Vicki, that's so powerful. That is something that we all would love, to be able to live without fear. It's really helpful when you understand how the universe operates. It operates by law. There are laws that govern everything. And by abiding and learning and discovering what they are, we can live in greater faith and in less fear, because we know that if it's governed by law, then it's predictable. If I put on the screen of my mind the outcome that I would love and let myself feel it, I'm tuning into a different broadcast of ideas, and the ideas and the sparks that come to me, I can trust by law to help me get that thing that I want. Now, we may, like Ann said, we may get an idea that's like, ooh, yeah, that might help me get what I want, but I don't want to do that. So that's a choice, but you're not without ideas that will get you there. That is one thing that can help reduce that anxiety. Kelly says, this seems selfish to me, but the word comfort is a holy word to me. I would love to be comfortable in all facets of my life. That is a beautiful, beautiful explanation of that. And I agree with you. Leslie said, I would love to have a thriving online business so I can live life on my terms. That's powerful. That's powerful. So we are coming up to the end of this presentation. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I hope you've learned something. And I hope you will go over to that link again. Take the next step. Don't be afraid to take the next step, because you're going to be supported. You're going to feel supported, and you're going to feel like you're doing the right thing when you're doing that next right step, even when it's scary. And do you have anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, just I'm so grateful for you that are here. It brings so much hope to my heart that there are people who are trying to up level and are trying to reach and trying to trust and trying to have faith. There is so much contention and doubt and fear mongering all over in this world. And I just love to stand with people who are like-minded and who are up leveling and saying, no, all of this is possible and God is still right here. So thank you so much for just being part of that experience of just being lovers of light and lovers of belief and lovers of truth.